when people say they're in growth mode, having growth mindset, I like the intentionality where that's going, but I want it to be a little bit more specific because the thing about growth is, are you growing seeds or are you growing weeds? Both are still growing. They're still growing, and so you could be growing, but are you really growing things that are serving you highest and best for yourself, or are you growing things that really bear fruits and fruits that you really want to have?
I'm Junaid Ahmed, host of Hacks and Hobbies podcast and a digital presence advisor at HumbleZone. This episode is brought to you by Home Studio Mastery. I launched a consultation and course program to help podcasters and course creators to create a space in their homes that'll reduce the friction of creating content and appearing their best when showing up on camera. The pandemic gave us a lot of issues, but this one is here to stay. We're now so much closer to our audience thanks to video becoming more popular and affordable. I help guide folks who want to create Hollywood-worthy studios to not only capture great content, but also build more confidence, more authority, and be more comfortable in front of the camera. If I can do it, you can too. And with my help, you can do it faster. So if you'd like to learn more, visit homestudiomastery.com and how you too can create a home studio that brings out your personality, professionalism, and possibilities. Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life who want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. Today we get to speak with Benjamin Yeh. He is a business and transformation coach. Combining his investment experience and intuitive gift, Ben empowers entrepreneurs on how to gain clarity in discovering their true north, start thriving in their businesses, and live the life they are meant to create. Ben's career has evolved from being a real estate consulting investment officer for a family office where he invested over $1 billion, serial entrepreneur, husband, father, advisor, coach, and overall student of life. Ben launched his Boom Vision podcast in 2021, a show designed for driven entrepreneurs and professionals seeking clarity, purpose, and happiness. His show dives deep on how to create lasting success by building a solid foundation of a healthier mind, body, and soul. It all starts with a powerful mindset. I'm super excited to speak with Ben on today's episode as we dig in deep into the origin story of Benjamin Yeh. Hey Benjamin, thanks for coming on, brother.
Thanks so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to have our interview and conversation.
Fantastic. So what I like to do is take our listeners, take the one guy that's listening to us, that's usually myself, listening back to the episode, is what inspired you to take the path that you took. And you know, let's start with who's Benjamin, where he comes from, and let's jump right in.
Yeah, no, let's see here. So the best way to describe it is that, I'm on my third chapter in my career. But I guess before we get into the chapters, I was originally born in Taiwan, came to the States when I was 3, and grew up in LA in California. And so really my first language was English rather than it being Mandarin. But, when I started my career, my first chapter, I was actually a real estate hospitality consultant. So I did that for about 4 years. And essentially, it was like living out of a suitcase for 4 years. Being a consultant, you're always on travel. Sometimes I forget like what time zone I'm in. And what happened was it was the day before Christmas in 2008. Went into the office and got laid off, which was lovely. I can remember that vividly. And it's funny because like I remember I was working in downtown LA at the time. I remember driving down. I had Kiss FM turned on.
Oh yeah.
And there's a new song that came on by the Pussycat Dolls called I Hate This Moment Right Now. I was like, oh, that's a catchy tone, right? But I was like, ooh, something feels off here. Right? And sure
Mhm.
enough, I went in and, I got laid off. And so it was definitely a bit of a stressful time. But, usually when one door closes, another one opens up if you're looking in the right areas. And
Yeah.
I had a really, really amazing opportunity to work for a family office. And so this is my second chapter in my career where a family office is just a fancy term for an investment team. And
Mhm.
so the people I worked for were the founders of Panda Express. And so they built really a restaurant empire. It's a mom and pop store, meaning it's completely family owned. They didn't franchise, it's all company owned. And it started with
Wow.
one restaurant. And
Holy
now I
smoke.
think right now they have like over 2,200 stores.
Wow.
So they built a behemoth. And so the time I joined them, because of my real estate background, all the money they made in the restaurant business, they and then generated an income, we invested on their behalf. So we bought a lot of real estate. We bought a lot of retail centers, apartments, office buildings, and because my background matched that in terms of adding value to their investment team,
Yeah.
and so I was there for 7 years. At the time, I think they had like maybe 1,200 stores. They opened like 100 stores every year, which, if you think about it, that's like one store every 3.5 days. So it was a very well-oiled machine at the time in terms of the restaurant group, and it was just it was a great principal to work for, and it was a tremendous amount of experience because not only do we invest in real estate, but because
Mhm.
of how much money they generated,
Yeah.
a lot of people knock on the doors asking for investments. You want to invest in this startup, you want to invest in this venture capital deal, private equity deal, you want to invest in this fund. And so essentially almost anything you could think of under the sun, I've seen it come across my desk, and we would evaluate and then would see if it's the right fit or not. And so it was a really amazing experience as a corporate executive working in a family office as an investment officer. But what was very interesting was halfway through, so I met my wife at Panda. So we're
Mhm.
considered a Panda couple, right? And when we got married and when we had our first kid, I was on a maternity leave and I was forced to turn off my BlackBerry. I could not access my emails in BlackBerry, right? And so I was forced to unplug.
Oh, wow. You're like, you're off. Mhm.
I was off. I was off the grid. And so I was off the grid for like a month. And I remember it was the second week after my son was being born. And I was laying in bed next to my wife. I was staring at the ceiling and I had this vision. And this vision I had it was very odd because I saw this house and this front yard, and it was me and my wife. We had two kids running around. At the time, I only had one child. It was my son, and we were living in an apartment. So it was a vision
Yeah.
of the future, and it seemed everyone was very happy. But what was very odd about it was as I'm seeing this vision play out on my inside, I was not feeling that same level of happiness. I was actually feeling empty. I was like, wait a minute, why is that? Like, isn't that what we aspire to, right? Like,
Mhm.
the American dream of having a home and, having a beautiful family. But why is it that in the vision I had where I felt like I should be having this certain level of happiness, why I'm not feeling that on the inside? And when I really dug into and really sit with that, I realized that the path that I was currently on was a path created by others. It wasn't created by me. It wasn't what
Mm.
my soul wanted to be on. And what I mean by that, is, coming from a fairly traditional Taiwanese family, based on culture, based on our backgrounds, you aspire to typically one of three type of professions, right? Either a doctor, lawyer, or in business, right? And if my intention was to create this amazing career as an investment officer for a Forbes 500 family, like this is
Yeah.
it. There's no better place to be. But yet, I felt like maybe that was what my culture, my parents, what society wanted, but it wasn't necessarily what I really wanted.
Yeah.
And that was a tough pill to swallow because it's like knowing that now, having that awareness. Now what? What do I do? Right? It's like it's almost like
Absolutely.
it's like being stuck or going through like a midlife crisis, right? And it wasn't until a few years later that I decided to finally take that leap of faith. And I remember sharing the news with the principals, and I gave them like a 6 months notice. I was like, look, I know there's a transition period in this. I want to do this right. And it was, but I just also knew in the back of my mind, in my heart, I was like, okay, I need to give myself the space to explore, to really figure out what I want to do, because
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
path I was on as an investment officer, your job and your career is measured by a number, which is just return. And I didn't want my life to just be just a number, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I want to be more meaningful in that. And so, but what was it, right? And that was my journey of exploring that. And around the same time too, I started gaining more experience and exposure to spirituality. Before I was very, as you could imagine, I was very left brain, 100% logic, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to do a SWOT analysis? I could definitely give you that, right? I was very just more analytical, but the principles are very big on self-development. So I've done Tony Robbins, landmark education, read a lot of different books, and through this journey, but also getting and experiencing what's theta healing, what's reiki healing, some energy work, it really broadened my horizon and activated my right brain, my creativity, to try and balance it out. And through this, that was when around the seventh year, I was like, okay, I think I really need to take that leap of faith and explore on my own. And so that's
Yeah.
already been about 5, 6 years ago. And that's where my third chapter, what I meant by that I
Mm-hmm.
started, is this entrepreneurship route. Because when you're investing in different companies in different stages of their business cycles, I mean, it's like betting on horses, right?
Yeah.
But the entrepreneur is a jockey. The ones that actually owns a horse is the one that really, they put into blood, sweat, and tears, but also get the
Yeah.
maximum kind of value. And so I caught that bug and I was like, hey, you know what? I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to explore, see what's out there. And so I ventured in different businesses with different sets of partners. But the one thing that always came back as a constant was,
Yeah.
my wife was, she's always right. And one of the things that she observed is like, Ben, whenever you coach with CEOs or management teams, because, when we're investing in companies, sometimes I'll either sit on boards or whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
when I see you coach people, that's when I see you most alive. And she's right, because when you're immersing yourself in, whether it's a hobby or something that brings you joy, true joy from within, you lose track of time,
Yes, you do. Mm-hmm.
right? Like time just doesn't exist when you're in that zone. And for me, I realize I'm in that zone when I coach and empower people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like, okay, you know what? I really want to focus. I've been coaching over the last decade, but it's more been one-offs. I really want to focus on this if my passion and my fulfillment is drawn from that. And so
Yeah.
that's where I decided to really pay attention and build that practice. And also that's when I started my podcast. And that's when a chain of events happened where it's like, you know what? I've been listening to Pat Flynn since I left, that
Yeah.
corporate job. And I've always been very inspired, but also appreciate his approach in terms of how he has values for his audience. And that's when, okay, maybe I should do a podcast, right? And so that's when kind of things led in. And that's where I was like, okay, maybe a good community to be part of is SBI Pro. And it
Yeah.
connected me people like yourself and a bunch of other
Yeah.
friends that I've met. So yeah, hopefully that gives you sort of a broad journey of
That's
yeah,
a really broad journey and a really good one too, because believe it or not, every single one of us has a different chapter in us. We
yeah,
just don't, we don't, we might have it on the back of your heads, and we're constantly growing, which we're constantly discovering ourselves, right? I was listening to Ron Burgundy podcast as he interviews this brain. He's basically a brain surgeon or
mm,
brain scientist, right?
hmm,
So, and the brain scientist says that yes, every single day we have 1,700 new brain cells being
mm,
born. Where do you put them? And if you stay in the same state that you're in, well, if you don't give your brain new information to
mm,
store, those brain cells will literally die.
mm,
And then an example that they did was in London, to be a taxi driver, you have to learn the entire city by heart before you're a licensed taxi driver.
Interesting.
And then they did brain scans of somebody who was a 3 year, who had been driving for 3 years versus somebody who was driving for 10 years.
Yeah.
And the part of our brain that does navigation was huge on the person, who's been driving for 10 years because they know all of the routes, they
Yeah.
know exactly how to get you there, and based on the time of the day, they know where there's not going to be any traffic.
Mm.
So I was like, holy smokes, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
just learning about that 1.1700 new cells every day,
Yeah.
there is no limit to what we can learn if you
Mm.
put our mind to, like, literally put your mind to it, right?
100%. 100%.
So,
That's one of the things I also share on my podcast really is like,
mhm,
when you think of mind, body, and soul, typically the word association that comes up is yoga, right? Which is one form of
yeah,
it, but it's not the
mhm,
only form.
it's
And
not the
and
only
yoga is
form.
definitely a great work. And my wife was also a yoga instructor, so
Mhm,
major respect to that practice because it's a lot about breathing and really doing the inner work.
yeah,
But it really starts with the mindset, right? How do you build that? And it's funny to share that story because it reminds me of an anecdote. When I was an investment officer for Andrew Churn,
mhm,
he does a lot of site visits of his stores. And
yeah,
so many times when I'm in the car with him and we're traveling, doing some site visits, initially I relied a lot heavily on
mhm,
my GPS system in my car.
yeah,
And he'll tell me which store he wants. I'll pop an address and I'll just follow it. But early on, as we're driving, he just canceled it and just like, no, just go.
yeah.
I was like,
I'll
what?
tell you where to turn.
Well, not only did I tell you to turn, but just like, it's
Okay,
around there. Just drive. And I was like,
okay,
and I started freaking out. I was like, wait, I
yeah,
don't know where I'm going. But what I've learned, and so what I had to then do instead was
mhm,
before I know I was going to go on in a car with Andrew on a site
yeah,
visit, I would memorize the routes right before on like MapQuest or whatever it is, because he's
yeah,
not going to allow me to use GPS.
mhm,
But the discipline I learned, the lesson I learned from that is when you rely heavily on an externality, whether it's a tool, it's a framework,
yes,
you are really giving power to that and you're not really exercising your inner knowing, your
mhm,
intuition. That leads into a bit of what I share in my podcast, but it
yeah,
was a really big lesson for me because then how else are you going to have ability to practice and have that inner sense of knowing, hey, are you going in the right direction or not?
yeah,
If you unless you rely heavily on that GPS. So I love the fact that when you were sharing about the taxi drivers in London, it's like when you
mhm,
have that, whether it's memorization or whatever it is, rather than just relying on your phone, Waze app, or whatever it is, if you actually internally build up that internal guidance system that you have, that
yeah,
everyone has,
yeah,
you just have to be able to listen. How's it trying to signal to you, and how do you able to strengthen it? Because that
mhm.
stays with you throughout life,
It does.
right?
Absolutely. People can steal your money, but they cannot steal your knowledge,
Mm,
right? I've
yeah,
I've heard that quote so many times, like, something that you keep forever.
yeah,
And you're right, in so 4 days in a week, we take my kids to another place for, their class. Initially, I had to use the GPS to, get there, but over time, like, I don't need a GPS. I know exactly how to
yeah,
get there because you pay attention to the signs, you pay attention to our surroundings. Like, yeah, now GPS does let you know that it's going to take you this many minutes, like you're this much this far away, and then kids will always ask, are we there yet? How much longer to go? Like, it's 10 minutes. It's always 10 minutes. So,
yeah.
so really, really awesome. Thank you for sharing your origin story and the different chapters. Now that you're on your third chapter, you've
Mm,
got a new podcast going. Um, I know I pulled it up. Boom Vision podcast.
yeah.
Really loved the story when we had our conversation a few months ago.
Mm.
Would you mind telling the audience, where you came up with the name Boom Vision podcast?
Oh yeah, no, I'd love to. I'm getting the chills just thinking about it. So it's and I know that's my signal knowing I'm on the right track. So boom vision. So it's I think the similarities and parallels that we have is that we created our podcast because it's something we wanted, that we saw that there's a gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized and where I am now, I know I'm 43 now, and where I'm in my life is that when I think back on that time when my son was born and when I had that vision and not knowing, having awareness of knowing, of feeling stuck, but not knowing what to do, how to go about it. I wish there was a language that existed for someone like me that was completely left brain, complete logic based, to
Mm.
understand this world is so much more expansive if you're just open and curious. And but what is the language? What is the frameworks for me to use and learn for me to understand and process that?
Yeah.
And so for me, what Boom Vision is about is, I wanted to create something where it's about building a strong foundation of mind, body, and soul so that success is built on top of a solid foundation rather than on being a house of cards. And it starts with a mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
in a mindset, it's three core pillars. And this is from my experience in all the different chapters in my career, but also in my self discovery, also in my spiritual journey. It boils down to three core pillars. It boils
Mm-hmm.
to imagination, voice, and intuition.
Mm.
Imagination, voice, and intuition. Now, what does that mean? Your imagination is what you see mentally. Your voice or inner voice, what you hear mentally. And your intuition is what you hear, feel, what you feel mentally.
Mm-hmm.
What you see, what you hear, what you feel. If you're able to go into what I call your inner mental gym and exercise those three muscles, you are magnifying and amplifying your inner world that then becomes your outer reality.
Wow.
And so for me, I knew because when I coach people, I really listen to the language they use because
Mm-hmm.
the language they use has energy behind it. And what I'm trying to understand is that energy matching the vision or the goal that you're setting for yourself, whether it's building a new business, whether it's building a new career, whatever it is,
Yeah.
it needs to match because if it doesn't match, maybe that gap is it's where you feel stuck.
Mm.
And so because language is I'm very intentional with it. Okay, I knew it's about mind, body, and soul, but the mind is really about imagination, voice, intuition. So if I take those five words, imagination, voice, intuition, body, and soul, and if I take the first two letters of those five words and I scrabble it,
Mm-hmm.
you get either vision boom or you get boom vision. And so I remember I was sitting in this office and
Mm.
I was mapping it out. It's like, oh, that's pretty coincidence. Okay, so and I said it out loud. I was like, okay, so is it vision boom or is it boom vision? And right when I said that, right across from me is a window. Right when
Mm.
I asked that question out loud, is it vision boom or is it boom vision? A bird flew right into my window, and it was like right towards my head too. So I
Yeah.
froze. I looked up. I was like, holy cow, what just happened? And there's still feathers stuck to the window. I had to take a picture.
Uh,
I'm like, no one's going to believe me unless they see it. There's feathers stuck to the window. And I was like, okay, that's the universe telling me it's boom vision.
mm.
Got it. I hear you loud and clear. It's boom vision, right? And like, I'm a big movie guy. I love watching
Yeah.
movies. I grew up
Oh my
in,
God.
and
We
when I
got a lot to
got
talk about.
this idea of the Scrabble is because one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time is this movie called Sneakers. Not
Mm-hmm.
sure if you've ever seen that movie before.
I don't remember.
It's back in like the 90s where if you heard of Field of Dreams with
Uh-huh.
Kevin Costner, right? Same
Okay.
director, came around 1 or 2 years after that. So
Okay.
this is around the same genre. It has Robert Redford, River
Mm-hmm.
Phoenix, Sidney Poitier. Like it's a powerful cast, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And in that movie, in the middle of the movie, I don't want to ruin it, but go watch it, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
In the middle movie, they they intercepted something, and initially the description of the technology was called C Tech astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, what does that mean? Does that mean something, is astronomy related? Is it NASA related? What does this word mean?
Yeah.
But as they were celebrating and they're playing Scrabble, they realized, wait, it doesn't mean that. They took the same letters, they scrabbled it, and then realized it actually meant too many secrets. And so that actually has to do a little bit about the movie and what it is. So again,
Mm-hmm.
it's not really a spoiler alert, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that scene always stuck with me. And so that's why for me, I was like, I want to be intentional. It's about these core pillars, but it's really about balancing mind, body, and soul as it relates to your career, to your business.
Yeah.
that's how I came with Boom Vision. I was like, okay, I knew this is something special. Like, that's the title, you know? Yeah.
Wow, that's I love that. Bam! That boom, basically
Yeah.
smacking, and then here's your vision.
Yeah.
All right, all right. I love that. I love that, man. So that's your motivation that keeps you going, right? Because now in chapter three, you're fulfilled. You're in your zone of genius. Um, what's this gentleman's name? It's the book is called The Big Leap
Mm,
by Gay Hendricks,
mm,
and he talks about there's four competencies.
mm,
There's a zone of incompetence where you don't know how to do any of it. You can do it. There's zone of competence. Then there's zone of intelligence,
mm,
and then there's a zone of genius. A lot of
mm.
us hang out in the zone of intelligence. Like we
Yeah.
know it, we're good at it, but it's not really fulfilling us. It's not
Yeah.
doing the time thing. Like the time doesn't fly. Like okay, I'm got to do this. I can do this all day, kind of thing. But when you're in your zone of genius, then the time literally stops.
Mm,
And then you can just just be free with your time. And there's
mm,
something that he talks about calling time diet. And it's like I have
mm,
massive amounts of time. Like why can't you be happy in business, in life, and spiritually? Like why can't you do that? It's because there's something in our psyche that automatically say, oh, if you're doing good in one area, something else got to go bad. So it's a really awesome
mm.
book. Really powerful. It enabled me to think past the glass ceilings that we put above ourselves, and that's kind of the breakthrough you went through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's those beliefs or limiting beliefs that we have that construct in our mind that then
Yeah.
creates our reality. Like it's interesting. It's like, if you have that belief where if something good in my life is happening and it comes unexpected, that
Mm-hmm.
must mean something bad's about to be around the corner,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
you have that belief, then that's going to manifest in of itself,
It's gonna
right?
manifest.
Why does it
Yes.
have to be or? Why can't you live in a
Mm-hmm.
world of and? Why can't I
Yes.
have that without that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. And it's because of the experience we had as a child, as growing up and our culture, our family backgrounds, whatever dynamics and experience we've gone through,
Yeah.
there's certain key moments where, yeah, you'll be able to relive it very vividly and then you remember, but it's like, what's that lesson in there? And what was your interpretation? Because that perspective
Yeah.
created a belief and that seeds once it's planted, then is that going to be, here's the thing, like when people say they're in growth mode, having growth
Mm-hmm.
mindset, I like the intentionality where that's going, but I want it to
Yeah.
be a little bit more specific because the thing about
Yes.
growth is, are you growing seeds or are you growing weeds? Both are still growing.
They're still growing.
They're
Exactly.
still growing. And so you could be growing, but are you really growing things that are serving you highest and best for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you growing things that really bear fruits and the fruits that you really want to have?
Yeah.
It's seeds or weeds,
Absolutely.
right? And so that's the thing is our language, our belief. It's easy to say, but until you understand the meaning and then you start upgrading your language. I what I share in my podcast is that we have what's called I call SOS,
Mm-hmm.
subconscious operating system, right? We operate a lot in our conscious mind, but
Mm-hmm.
there's times and a lot of times, we're operating on autopilot.
Yeah.
The classic
All
example,
the time.
we both have kids. We're dropping
Yeah.
our kids off in school, and so we know the route very well because we do that
Yeah.
day in day out. But then on weekends, if I'm going to a grocery, I'm going in a similar route, but I'm supposed to make a right turn. But instead, if I'm heavily in thought, I'm on autopilot. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to school, even though I have no,
Yeah.
my kids are in a car, right? And then I realize after I snap out of it, oh God, I was on autopilot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, have you ever experienced that before?
Oh,
And
yes, all the time.
yeah,
Like, "Why am I going this way again? Oh, okay."
yeah, because we were on autopilot. And the thing
Mhm.
is that when we're deep in thought, our body then becomes on autopilot, our subconscious. So
Yeah,
our programming in our subconscious, our SOS, that's where our belief system, that's where innately we're going to be running those programs. And the question is the language you use and the program you have. is that an old SOS that you just basically need to upgrade? Do you have that
Yeah.
awareness to upgrade? Because if it's not serving you where you want to go, it's time
Right.
to upgrade that language.
Oh, I
Right.
love that upgrade because so I've been in tech support for a long time and right, so it's like having computer problems and I'm like, all right, let's do a Zoom session. I'd log onto the computer and then I see two big blaring red icons next to system update and software. I'm like,
Right.
you need to update the software to use the features that we were talking about. So totally makes sense that sometimes we forget to upgrade our own internal software
Yeah.
because we're hanging out with the same people at the same time. So growth mode, I like the seeds versus weeds idea because that's absolutely right. I mean, spring is here and I'm looking at my garden and I'm looking at my yard and I see a lot of weeds. I'm like, I gotta go out there and pull them out or,
They're going to suck out their nutrients of what you want to
overseed.
grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
100%.
it.
Yeah.
So Benjamin, you've been coaching, you've been helping businesses transform for what, almost 5 years now?
I mean, on and off, I've been doing it in the last 10 years, but
Okay.
really in the last 2 years when I really put the gas, pedal on, I was like, you know what? I know this is what makes my soul feel very fulfilled. So let me dedicate more time
Yeah.
in this because it just makes me feel alive, honestly.
I
And
love it.
that's when I started my podcast last September. I took Power Up Podcast course with Rap Flynn to really, take it really more seriously.
Yeah.
And it's been such a journey because through the sharings and interviews, but also just sharing what I've known and the concepts I have, it's just really what are the little things you can do on a weekly, daily basis to
Yeah.
upgrade that SOS, right?
So, Benjamin, let's take a journey and walk us through, give us some pointers on something that we can take action to immediately after listening to this podcast. What's something that someone can start with to introduce transformation in their lives? I mean, do we really need it? Or
Yeah,
how do you even identify that?
great question, man. So three things. I will talk a little bit about putting more of a analogy and context to what I mean by the three core pillars.
Hmm.
The second thing will be about what's soil, water, and sun, and then the third thing is actually a framework they can create as a ritual to really shift the energy within your mindset. Okay,
Nice.
so the first thing, when I say imagination, voice, intuition, I mean those aren't new words, but what does that really mean? And so the mental picture I want you to think about is, when you're thinking about our business, our career is like a car, right? We're the driver of it, but it's where we want to take that car. But if you really think
Yes.
about that and if you zoom out for 1 second, our personal bodies is our vehicle, is our car. Our mind is our driver of this personal vehicle. And one of the questions I always ask people is like, can you imagine if you had your eyes closed, if you're driving and your windshield is fogged up, so you can't really see clearly, if you got music blasting loud so you can't really hear if there's like another incoming car honking on you and trying to signal to you, you won't be able to hear it because you have the music way too loud. And then you can't really even feel how hard or soft you're pressing the gas pedal, and your GPS system is non-functional. If you can imagine yourself driving blindly and without hearing and without feeling, that's a recipe for disaster, right? That's just bound to crash. And that's what I mean by
Wow.
imagination, voice, intuition. Are you seeing? Are you hearing? Are you feeling where it is that you want to go? And how I break it down is your imagination. Are you imagining? Is your imagination a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, or is it as expansive as the entire world? How
Wow.
constricted or expansive is it? Because if you understand the realm and how expansive your imagination is, that's where you draw your questions from. Are you asking small questions or big questions? Are you asking the right questions, right? And so that's what I mean by vision in terms of seeing through a windshield. Are you driving blindly
Hmm.
or do you have a clear idea of where you're going? What is voice? What's inner voice? Well, inner voice, that's the self talk that we have. Looking in the mirror is like, I look funny today. Why do I have that? right?
Mm-hmm.
It's usually negative self-talk, right? I mean, there's scientific study has been done, and it's like I think it was Dr. Bruce Limpton said that look, uh, basically for every as a child from 0 to 7, we hear more no's than yes. It's like you get hear two more no's for one yes. And as a
Mm.
parent now, oh my god, I'm telling you, I'm
Oh my God.
much more aware and conscious of it because I remember my son when he was first born and we started walking. I mean, he's like a little tank, right? He found
Yeah.
every corner in the room and he would bang on it. And right before, if he's about to head into a corner, I would be like, no, 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 don't do that. The span of 1 second, I said five no's.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I even bounce it with even one yes? And
Mm-hmm.
so as a parent, I'm like, wow, I really do say more no's than yes. And depending on your culture and your family upbringing, you might even be more than that.
More, a lot more. Yeah.
A lot more. And so that SOS, that programming, that inner voice, it's no wonder most people have a perspective of the world that is half empty rather than half full. It's not you.
Wow.
That's what I want to tell people. It's not you. It's just more if you have that awareness, what are you doing to upgrade your SOS, your language? That's the inner voice, right? Intuition. Intuition is what you feel. Now, the one other way I call intuition, this is your soul GPS.
Mm.
Because let me ask you, as a parent, as a father, as a entrepreneur, how many times have you ever had like that gut feeling and you didn't listen to it because logic didn't make sense, but
Yeah.
looking back, oh my god, that would have been the right call.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experienced that?
Oh yes, all the time.
Right. And it's like, why didn't I listen to my gut feeling? Why didn't I
Mm-hmm.
listen to my intuition? That was my soul GPS giving a slight signal saying, you might want to course correct. It's usually very subtle, but it's
Yeah.
like, are you, and it's different. It's different from your inner voice. Your inner voice, that, maybe that negative self talk, maybe it might be coming from ego. Usually it's more emotionally charged. Your soul GPS is usually very calm, subtle. It's not emotionally charged. And
Mm.
so it's being able to make that distinction. Wait, how is my soul GPS trying to signal to me? Because that's my internal guiding system to help
Yeah.
me if I'm on track or am I going veering off track. So if you can really start exercising those three inner muscles, mental
Yeah.
muscles, imagine how far in
Phew.
life you can go in terms of that, right? Because like, thing about in business nowadays, I have a love-hate relationship with this hustle mentality because that
Yeah.
hustle and grind is really it's good to keep you consistent. However, are you going the right direction?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
You gotta figure
And
out that.
and And if you're not, then it's like you could be going 10,000 miles in the wrong direction. I'd rather take one step in the right direction
Mm-hmm.
because of my age, like where I'm at in my life right now, I rather be efficient with my time.
Yeah.
And I'd rather take a minute to just pop my head up. Am I heading in the right direction?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's imagination, voice, intuition. So hopefully that gives you a context of visual because like in this
It
hustle
does. Yeah.
mentality, everyone wants a faster car. I want to upgrade from a Camry to a Ferrari, right? Like it's always about faster car. It's like, wait, that 10,000 bag luggage you have that you're carrying with you, guess what? Even if you upgrade a car, that limiting belief carries with you too.
It does. Because
And if you
because
just,
when you
yeah,
when you jump on the street with that fast car, guess what? You're gonna be riding behind a slow car. You
that's
can't go
right. That's
faster
right.
than the car in front of you. It's
Yeah.
impossible.
And so, by merely identifying, knowing what limiting beliefs you have and letting go if it doesn't serve you in this stage of your life, that in of itself will make you go faster.
I love
It's
that.
never about the car. It's
It's
about the
never about the
driver
car.
and mindset, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
man. That
No,
was
no, sorry.
really insightful, inspiring, and I'm like totally pumped, man. This is powerful. We've
Awesome.
got few minutes left,
Oh, got it.
and
Okay.
for towards the end, we have some quick chat questions. I know
Sure.
I should have asked these questions before, but these are fun questions. We'll get through them pretty quickly.
Sure.
What is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
Mm. I have a lot of hobbies, but I would say the one look back, I remember watching Simpsons, and I remember the character Lisa was playing a saxophone. So I
Hmm.
actually always wanted to play the sax. I played a
Nice.
violin back in high school,
Yeah,
played a little guitar and ukulele, but I never picked up the sax. But that'd probably be one hobby I, looking back, I
nice.
wish I picked up.
Wind instruments.
Yeah,
Nice. I like it. I love it. Saxophone is very very smooth sounding, especially listening to Kenny G. Grew up listening to that Havana song. It's just classic,
it's
classic.
classic, right?
What did you want to be when you were a child?
What did I want to be when I was a child? You know, that's a good question. Every stage of my childhood, I think it evolved, but I would say, at one point I wanted to be a magician, and that's one of the hobbies I have actually. So I
There
also
you
do
go.
magic. So,
Nice.
but that would have been fun. It's like, what happens if I was a magician as full time? But for me, I'm more of a hobbyist. So,
I love it. Thank you, man. All right, next one. What is your favorite movie or TV show?
oh god, that's too tough to answer. I have a lot, but I'll say the one I really love right now is a TV show, and it's Ted Lasso.
Oh my God, Ted Lasso is amazing.
It is. I mean, because I'm a coach,
Absolutely.
so it's like I really vibe with his, just his lessons, and
Oh my
it's
God,
such
yeah.
heartfelt written, right? It has a lot
Very.
of
I,
positive emotions with
I
it.
can't wait for the next season. It's going to be
Me too.
epic. All right.
Yeah.
What movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Oh, what movie would I choose? Man, I forgot what I wrote down. What movie would I choose if I can be a character in it? Um, you know, I would be. Gosh, I've always wanted to be Marty McFly in
All
Back to the
right.
Future.
Oh my God.
I'll say that.
Talk about Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Lego just dropped the brand new
DeLorean.
Back to the Future DeLorean.
I saw that. I saw on
Yes,
Pat's like Instagram. I was like, oh, I think I need to get
because
that.
I was talking to Jillian and I was like, does Pat have it? She's like, yeah, he bought three of them. Like, of course he did. Because I bought two. I was gonna give Tim one, but I was like, I don't. I
Yeah.
guess I'll just keep them both.
Yeah.
Next question: Who is your favorite superhero?
Oh, who's my favorite superhero? Uh, I'm gonna have to go with Batman.
Yeah, you gotta. I mean, come on, it's in the shot.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say Batman. What I love about Batman is at the end of the day, he's a human being.
Yes.
His superpower isn't necessarily gifted in a sense, but
Hmm.
he uses his resources and his everything within his reach to
Yeah,
serve.
to serve.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
exactly what he's doing. He's serving. Um, Last question:
Hmm.
If you were a board game, what would it be?
Good question. If it's a board game, what would I be? Oh man. If I'm a board game, man, I'm gonna go with the first one that pops into mind, which is Settlers of Catan.
Oh, that's a good one.
And the reason that came into mind is because it's always about managing your resources,
Yes, it is.
right?
It's all
It's
about
it's
the
that's the core of
resources.
it.
Yeah, it is the core.
And when you know how to balance and manage your resources, then you'll know either slowly or quickly how to get from one point to another.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's just so. That's so coach-like. I mean, you're you're really awesome, man. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wish we could do this much longer, but we got to cut it down at some point.
Sure,
Where
sure.
can my audience find you?
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. There's a couple ways people can find me. I have my website, which is www.benjaminyeh.com. Last name spelled Yeh. I
Nice.
also have my podcast, Boom Vision. Love to hear it. The second and third step I talked about, when water, soil, water, and sun, and also the morning ritual. I also
Mhm.
share that in my podcast. And
Nice.
then I also have an Instagram, which is at Benjamin Yeh. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn at Benjamin Yeh. So,
Awesome.
any questions, if you feel stuck, just shoot me a DM. If I can help you make that quick win and serve, happy to.
Awesome.
That's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Benjamin. We'll be sure to include all of the ways to contact you, podcast notes. And thank you so much again. We'll talk to you soon.
Pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Hacks and Hobbies episode. Junaid would love to hear from you, so please leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Visit hacksandhobbies.com to find additional information on the guest today, as well as the show notes.